Hello. What is it? Monday. Boy, we are just doing a lot of shows, aren't we? Gosh. Yeah. So packing it in here and lots of stuff going on in my life. And when things happen, when decisions get made, I will let you know. But in the meantime, I'm here tonight at 8 o'clock. So time to get your questions in while you can. And appreciate everybody being here. Got a little celebratory drink over here. So let's work the community to gather. I don't know who all's here, but Zach is here. Hey, Zach, how you doing? Yes, it's UCF, not UFC. I appreciate your what you're saying there. But anyways, so this is a little more of a law tube type cast tonight. Shane, good to see you. How are you? A little more law tube-ish. And I know people, I don't know, we'll see what they like and what they don't like. I just do what I want. And I had a couple insights into this particular case that you might enjoy. And it's unique, no covering it, except me. When I heard the people that are covering it, but it's like everybody gets running off after the interesting dog and like, oh, that person views. So what I think is important and what I think is registering on my radar and what's significant. So, maybe this is or not, but also things that I might have some special insight into, in which this case I do a little bit generally. Zach, Lily, good morning. Yellow, orange, red. Where's your favorite countdown? I did the countdowns. I'm interested. Hello, Stephen Gosney. Good to see you. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll just talk, and I want to tell you the go-to website for this story, and I don't know if you've heard about it, is Legal Insurrection. And William Jacobson is a law professor from Cornell. And I will tell you, he's one of the people that legitimately intimidates me as a lawyer. The guy is super smart, and he's a law professor at Cornell, and he is brilliant legally. Now, I have house of law, criminal Florida law, right? So maybe if he was talking criminal law, Florida law, I would be a little more, chest out or whatever. But boy, I'll tell you, William Jacobson is brilliant, and he runs a website called Legal Insurrection, and he's a conservative professor at Cornell, so and always has insights, and he has things that he covers that are special to him. He's Jewish, so he's very much involved in covering the Israeli conflicts and what's going on in Israel and anti-Semitism. He also covers a lot of things about kind of leftist takeover campuses and colleges. So this story goes in that wheelhouse. So you want to read, he's a very good lawyer, knows what he's talking about, gives you some insights. So with that, David Nelson, good to see you. So I have hand. We're celebrating. You just celebrate with me just because you can. It's Monday and this is unusual, but I have some things to celebrate today because I feel good. Multiple things, actually. Some things I may reveal. Depends if you guys. I've got a couple things I can reveal, a couple things I can't. Depends how it goes tonight, how I feel. Maybe the sidecars will get my tongue wagging. Maybe not. Anyways, one of the things I'm celebrating, which I'll tell you right up front, want everybody to gather together here. Gather together. Jacob Castro, Sub Savages. He always comes in with that. That's funny. He's my Rumble buddy. Good to see you. So the first thing, I have another sip of honey-drenched sidecar, is I have successfully ported all of my books over to Amazon. Okay, so now SteveGosney.com is still, all the books are available there, autographed copies, and Brucey the One-Eyed Wonder Dog is only available from me there. Okay, so except for that, but the audiobooks of Prepare and Death Penalty Debates, as well as soft cover books of all of them, as well as Kindle books is all available at Amazon. Now so that's number one, which is pretty cool. The hardcovers, and if you want any of these autographed, I'd rather you get them from me. But I'm moving a lot of reasons. One is Hands Off. Fiery Red Podcast. Hey, look, it's good to see you, man. I missed you, brother. Good to see you. God bless you, man. Yeah, so that's good news. I mean, and I'd like to call out, I need your help. If you could do me a favor, a little ask of my friends here. Have any of my books, and you've read them and you like them, go on Amazon and give me a review of the books, because I think it helps when the books have a lot of good reviews, and it's can do, it won't cost you. Scott, awesome. Good to see you. Love my. So cheers to that. First celebration for my legal now. Who is Professor Negy? My first insight is that I have a master's degree from University of Central Florida in criminal justice. So my UCF degree, my master's degree. I don't know if you remember, I interviewed Professor Michael Reynolds, who was a UCF professor, and the only professor there that I thought was great. Washington and Lee, so many great professors at my law school. I mean, I was humbled. They were all so wonderful. I can't say the same for UCF. There's a lot of disparaging nicknames for UCF. One is you can't finish. It's University of Central Florida, but UCF you can't finish. But I have a Golden Knight. I have my master's from the Golden Knights UCF. I can't say that I lead with that as far as in fact, I will say honestly, I could have taught almost every class. I'm not saying but here I got the degree. I learned how, one of my objectives for doing that master was learn how to write academically. And that I did. And I wrote law review articles. A lot of my law review articles came out of my UCF experience and my master's degree. And Michael Reynolds was a big part of that. Ideas and Answers in Law is a conglomeration of those writings. So it's not without value. I had an objective. I had a reason that I was going to get my master's. I did. And in fact, there's been a lot of fruit that's been born by my exercise in academia. I will say, though, that some of those classes were just repeating the same thing over and over again. I've heard it all before. There was the political correctness stuff. There was just, and it's also, there was a lot of people that shouldn't have been there. It's UCF, they recruit, it's like they want to be the biggest in the country, the biggest school in the country. And they may be, but because of that, there's no standards. They just basically admit everybody. And not like Washington and Lee. It's so elite. It's unbelievable. Everybody there is so smart. I mean, when I went to Washington and Lee, there wasn't one person there that shouldn't have been there. There wasn't one person there that wasn't brilliant. I mean, our entire law school class was 120. So the whole law school was 360 people, and they were all excellent smart. Now, not all of them were nice. Some of them were SOBs and, snobs. And I got to know blue bloods, which are, old money conservatives who just wanted to, anyway, it was quite an experience. But I also met my closest friends, Mariah, Chris, Derek. I talk about Derek. Met my closest friends at Washington and Lee. So Washington and Lee was the best law experience, the best educational experience I ever had. But after that, I went and got my master's. And so I have a little insight. It's a big school. They're big for big's sake. They admit everybody. It's just like, come one, come all. So the standards are kind of low. And so you get kind of the masses. Now, I'm not saying that there's some brilliant students there, but there's also some mediocre students. So you get the whole range. It's a big, big school. All right. So with that said, let's talk about who Professor Scott Negy is. Professor Scott Negy is a professor at UCF. And he had tenure, been there teaching there 20 some years. Tenured full professor, basically had a lot of positive comments. So a lot of people, a lot of the students loved him. He was very highly rated, and et cetera, right? He's just doing his job, just an average Joe professor, right? Doing his job at a public school. and getting tenure and working, trying to do his academics and being a good teacher, you know, leave that man alone. Hey, teacher, leave that man alone, okay? But what happened was there was all this cancel culture and all this leftist takeover and these students and these crazy people and the administrators that are just anti anything conservative or anything that is not hard left is an enemy, right? So they what happened was he made some media posts, like social media posts questioning Black Lives Matter and some of the philosophy behind it. All right, let's just say he dipped his toe into the racial swirl on like X, on Twitter, making some tweets about Black Lives Matter, disagreeing with them fundamentally, as is our First Amendment right. Cheers to him for standing up for free speech. Slidey Pie's here. Good to see you, Slidey Pie. I just got done before we started up reading. She's reading Death Penalty Desires, the R-rated version. She's reading it. R-rated. She's reading it chapter by chapter. And I guess she's going to read through the first part. So she's got part 1. So thank you very much for doing that. I'm watching every one and I'm thrilled. It's really fun to watch somebody read what you wrote. And I don't know. I mean, I don't really know how it strikes me. It's a bit of inspiration. It came out the way it came out, and there it is. I don't know. I mean, what it is, it kind of takes a life of its own. If you like it, great. If you don't, I don't know. I mean, it's just fictional muse. But all right, so let's get back to Charles Negy, Professor Negy at UCF, tenured professor who speaks against Black Lives Matter. Well, that we can't have that. Can't have somebody speaking an opinion about something. What is it? What are you talking about, free speech? This is a university. We can't have that. So the cabal came after him. The administration of the school. It's really embarrassing that I have a degree from such a school. But they went after him. They solicited anybody who's had a problem with Professor Negy. We've got an open investigation. Submit your complaints. And so all the lefty students piled on, made all kinds of spurious accusations, lied, put him on the crucible. And basically just created made a living hell out of this guy. I mean, he's just trying to earn a living and live his life and do his academics. So it's really a pain, really disgusting. And the school trumped up a bunch of BS charges against him and fired him. Didn't give him any kind of, fired a tenured professor for saying something on tweet. Now and also supported by some garbage that students came up with when they open up. Anybody got any complaints about this conservative guy over here? Oh, what are you talking? Black Lives Matter and Antifa and these people. Well, we got to take that seriously, right? And these students are offended. I mean, come on. This is college, right? You can't be offended. What about history? I'm offended by history. History's full of things I'm offended by. So this is true. This is happening. Okay, you doesn't know a tenured professor could be fired, right? Who knew? Well, so then he takes it to an arbitration panel based on the professor's, whatever contract they have, and the professor panel or the arbitration panel says he was wrongfully terminated and ordered the school to rehire him with full back pay. How do you like them? Apples, right? Finding that all of the basis for them is a completely made up and slanderous charges. Meanwhile, our honorable Professor Negy. Now, first of all, could you imagine going back to school and I'm going to teach the class now after going through that hell? There really isn't a remedy here. I mean, it's like, okay, now you get your job back, but your job when everybody hates you and it's a toxic environment for a conservative, or it's somebody who's not hard left, who has an independent thought. We all had to march in line and be communists in these red institutions. Give me a break. They're so spineless. Stand up for something. These colleges have no spines. And let's think about the colleges. You think, okay, well, we got a president of the university. President of universities, their job is to make money, is to go and schmooze with people with a lot of money and buff the endowments. They don't really want to stand up for anything. It's political connected garbage. Ugh. I gotta have a drink after that. Mm-hmm. That's tasty. I'm celebrating. 3 things I'm celebrating today. One of which, all my books are up on Amazon except for Brucey. But if you want to get them autographed, which is better, you get them from stevegosney.com. But if you want to get the deal, then go over to Amazon. You can check and leave a review, right? So this is the story of Professor Negy. Now, what else do we know about Professor Negy? He sues everybody. He sues the school and these people who slandered him and sues them in federal court. Bell shows up. I'm glad. I was looking for you, Bell. I was waiting for you to get to the meat and potatoes because Bell's always here. This won't be that long. This is a short one. So he sues them all. Now, what do they claim? Well, they claim immunity, right? We're immune personally. He sues them personally for slander, and they try to cloak themselves in certain protections. So that is the setup. So he is in federal court suing the SOBs who conspired to wrongfully terminate him. And now we have a federal lawsuit. Now, I put the links in the description. You can read the full stories from Professor Jacobson's site, Legal Insurrection. But I want to go through this some operative parts of this order because there just came down an order, and this is what let's present. Let's share screen. I'll show you what. And I'm going to show you how great this. Well, first there's this article, which is great. Charles Negy, in many ways, is the poster child for what goes wrong when DEI takes over a campus. I like it DIE. It's one of the worst examples I've seen where a university, to placate the mob, and also because they don't like his opinions, really use the entire machinery of a major public university and taxpayer funding to get this professor. This is posted by William Jacobson on March 20th, 2023. So this is the background or article that you need to read if you want to get to know more about this. But this is an interview with the professor and all. So that's the first one. The second, oops, darn. Okay, so here's the second article I want to talk about. This is what happened just this week or just the other day. So this is court denies qualified immunity to University of Central Florida administrators on First Amendment claims of Charles Negy. How about that? I love it. So this is a significant pushback. So he is suing them. They're suing these administrators for doing what they did to him, which is wrong, wrong, wrong. And there needs to be this kind of pushback against this kind of mob action and these spineless administrators who don't stand up for free speech of their professors. I'd love to be a professor, but you think I want to go into the maw of the left-wing evil? They would grind me up. I have an opinion. I'm Catholic. I'm a white male heterosexual Catholic guy. They would chew me up. Man, that's wrong because those are all things that I was born as. I'm born as. Or my faith is personal and what I choose to follow. So how do you like this then? So this is May 5th, Sunday, May 5th, and I'm not sure exactly. There's Charles Negy right there. I don't know him, but he was a psychology professor, psychology known to be very left-wing. But they've been following this. So here's the tweet that's no longer available. And here's the second tweet that's no longer available. Can you see that? This is what he said that got him in such trouble. Yeah, there was a change.org petition, 30,000 signatures, Fire him. UCF, fire him. Student Senate passed a resolution. There's protests on campus in which the president participated. Eventually, UCF fired Negy based on the pretextual investigation. He took him to binding arbitration and won. He is reinstated by order. So he sues. Now, here's the key part of this. This is civil stuff, but it is in Florida. It's in my area. It's over in Orlando, and it's in the Middle District of Florida Federal Court. And I've got some insights here I wanted to share at the end here. But UCF and its officials moved to dismiss the complaint, arguing that the Board of Trustees was immune to suit due to sovereign immunity. Remember, this is a state university. And that the administrative officials named in the complaint had qualified immunity. Okay, interesting. The federal court in the Middle District of Florida ruled last week, dismissing part of the case based on sovereign immunity, lack of standing to seek injunctive, and dismissing some ancillary claims. But importantly, the court allowed the key First Amendment claims to move forward against the administrative officials, finding that enough had been alleged to overcome qualified immunity. Okay, so the court allowed his claims against administrative officials that they could overcome qualified immunity. Now, here's the full order. We're going to look through the full order a little bit. I'll skip through. You can read it for yourself. But he pretty much, Professor Jacobson here on legal insurrection, excerpts the key points. And I want to read this for you in full. Here's the key portion on Nagy's First Amendment claims. And this is very well written. Qualified immunity protects government officials from liability for civil damages insofar as their conduct does not violate clearly established statutory or constitutional rights of which a reasonable person should have known. Defendants argue, that's the college, argue that plaintiff Professor Nagy's allegations against individual defendants only cover acts that were within the scope of their discretion as administrators. This point is uncontested. Now burden shifts to plaintiff to show that defendants, so Negy now has to show, he has the burden of proof to show that the administrators violated clearly established law. The court must determine if a reasonable public official would understand that investigating and terminating the professor because of his Twitter posts and the subsequently solicited complaints violated his First Amendment rights. Okay, so now here's the distinction. This is interesting. Insofar as the professor's statements were made in the classroom pursuant to his official duties as a professor at UCF, the First Amendment affords him no protection. All right, but look at this. Here's the kicker. As to the plaintiff, that's Professor Nagy's statements made outside the classroom on Twitter, defendants, the UCF administrators, do not contest that plaintiff's Twitter posts were made as a citizen on a matter of public concern. Plaintiff posted from his personal account, which was unaffiliated with his role as a UCF professor, and disclaims opinion on my own. Therefore, by the way, all opinions made on this channel are my own and not the Office of the Public Defender. Okay. Therefore, those whose statements were in his capacity as a citizen rather than a state employee. The exact content is not the subject claim, but plaintiff alleged that speech argued that Black people were not systematically oppressed in the United States. That's what he's saying. Twitter is often used by members, blah, 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 blah. Plaintiff has adequately alleged his speech was a matter of public concern. Now, the defendants, that's the professor in the college, the college argued that the professor's statements caused great disruption on campus, impeding UCF's interest in maintaining efficient and non-disruptive work environment. All right, so this is the mob shutdown of professor speech. So if the left gets all upset and burns enough buildings, then any speech they can cancel a professor for speaking his mind because they don't agree with him, and they cause such disruption that it causes, so this endangers the campus, therefore we can fire him. It's sort of a circular reasoning. Like, who are you protecting it from? Who are you protecting the campus from? Well, from us, the protesters. Very disingenuous, very evil. This is the way they work, right? This is how they get good professors canceled. Mob action. And they're saying the mob action justifies the firing. No, that can't be right. Even if the speech, listen to this. This is great wordage from the order. This is the order of the judge in ruling. Even if the speech caused protests and campus unrest, it does not necessarily equate to an inefficient functioning of the university's public service, delivering an education to its students. Are you watching it? Can you see this? Yeah. Disruption, debate, disagreement, and protest happen at educational institutions, whether the result of athletic wins and losses, controversial speakers or texts, or current national global events. The state interest here is not strong enough to outweigh plaintiff's interest in free expression. This is one of the extraordinary circumstances where Pickering balancing shows, that's a legal test, defendant's conduct was unconstitutional. So that is, the university administrator's conduct was unconstitutional. The need to give in to the demands an offended, angry student body is not a basis to knowingly engaged in content discrimination. Oh my God, this is like music. This is perfect. This is a great, great order and a great language. Let's read this again, just so you fully get the impact here. The need to give in to the demands of an offended, angry student body is not a basis to knowingly engage in content discrimination. Therefore, at this early stage of the process, plaintiff, the professor, has met his burden of pleading defendant's conduct was forbidden by clearly established law. Okay. And then they break into this constitutional immunity. Accepting the allegations in the amended complaint is true, plaintiff was terminated in substantial part because of his controversial Twitter posts, and defendants have been unable to show by preponderance of the evidence that they would have terminated him absent that speech. So they fired him for tweeting about Black Lives Matter and saying Black people aren't discriminated against. So that's what he's fired for. That's an opinion. A personal person as a professor. Hey, alien, good to see you. That's right. D. Robertson, you nailed it. But see, this order is saying, so D, here, let's bring that up. So D. Robinson says, so you can have an opinion, but it must be in line with the mob mentality for it to be okay to say. That's what they want to say, but this judge is saying that is not sufficient. The mob does not get to vote on the free speech of individuals, which thank God, right? Therefore, and now continue going on to the university officials that are being sued, a reasonable official should have known that terminating an employee based on these Twitter posts violated the First Amendment. Right on. Thus, based on plaintiff's allegation, individual defendants are not entitled to qualified immunity under 1983 claims. 1983 claims this year, that's federal code, statute 1983. That is when a state actor violates your civil rights, your constitutional rights. There's a cause of action for state violation of civil rights. So this is what happens. Like if you remember the Virgilio Aguilar Mendez case, Virgilio is suing under 1983, saying that the police, a state agency, violated his civil rights, and therefore he's entitled to damages. That is what 1983. It's a great. In fact, I kind of like, that's one of my heart flutters a little bit. I'd love to do 1983 claims. My buddy Derek used to do 1983 claims. So how about that? Well, this is a very good ruling, clearly thought out, right on the money. And so here's the lawyer for Negy, the professor. It's an important first step to holding administrators accountable for their cruel acts of retaliation against Dr. Negy. It's a vindication of public employees' right to speak out in matters of public concern without fear of reprisal. Good job. Okay, so here's the order. So it's Charles Negy, plaintiff in the United States Middle District of Florida. Can we bring this up bigger? Yeah, that's pretty good. Can you see that? You getting that? Yeah. Okay, so United States District Court, Middle District of Florida, Orlando Division, 666. Uh-oh, the sign of the devil. Charles Negy, versus Board of Trustees, University of Central Florida. Can we see that? Can you see that? Yeah. Kent Butler, Alexander Cartwright, Tosha Duprez, Michael Johnson, Master. I don't know any of those people, so I don't know who they are. But obviously, he's suing them because he thinks those were the people that did his violations. So we'll see what the court says. But they're basically saying, you should have known. You can't fire somebody for their tweets on political stuff, right? That's stupid. But, you know, as a defense attorney, you're going to bring it up. You're going to say, hey, about this immunity stuff. So if you want to read the full order, it's there. But I have a little more to add, a little personal stuff I want to. So like I said, I know UCF. I'm very concerned because, you know, somewhere in my heart of hearts, I would love to be a law professor. But given the state of the academy, I don't think that will ever happen. Good fella, you start over. You got to start over. What is this? So I love teaching, but in the environment that's the hostile work environment that is these things, I don't think it's going to happen. But I wanted to go down to the bottom here and tell you a little story. Boy. Okay, so it's ordered as Jews. It's granted in part, denied in part. And here's the order, April 29th, 2024, Carlos Mendoza, United States District Judge. See that down there? Carlos Mendoza. I will tell you, he's one of the few federal judges I actually know. So let's talk about Carlos Mendoza. I think he was a Trump appointment. I remember when he got appointed. He was actually a prosecutor under my lead, the prosecutor that hired me, which was John Tanner, and trained me. Carlos Mendoza worked in our office, and then he became a judge, a circuit judge. And I had a trial I had a court trial with Carlos Mendoza. And I remember when he got appointed to the federal bench and under Trump. And I will say I have the greatest respect for Carlos Mendoza. In fact, I hope he goes on up. He could be on the 11th Circuit. He could be appellate judge or on up the. I know whether he'd take it or not. I don't know. He's a relatively humane guy. But I'm going to talk about my Carlos Mendoza stories. First of all, many people have told me that, or have commented about. I was trained under a great judge named Richard O. Watson. And Richard O. Watson, the courthouse in St. Johns County in St. Augustine, is named after Richard O. Watson. He was the greatest judge I've ever been in front of, bar none. Now, there's a couple, and I will say that a lot of prosecutors and defense attorneys who worked under him really respected Judge Watson. Loved him. I considered him actually a friend, and it's or at least a mentor. And so, a lot of people you're acquaintances with, but he looked after me like a father figure, and he was really a profound influence on the way I practice, the way I view things. He was always very encouraging to me. I love Judge Watson, and I must have had 20 felony jury trials in front of Judge Watson. And so a lot of people looked up to Judge Watson as a model judge, including Carlos Mendoza. So Carlos Mendoza and I both have a similarity in that we both really looked up to Richard O. Watson as a great model judge, and that's the way you should be a judge. And I remember talking to him about that and talking about Richard O. Watson with Carlos Mendoza. And so this judge is an excellent judge. I couldn't think of a better judge to have for such a case. Somebody who is grounded, a good trial judge, fair, thoughtful. Now, it's funny because I don't know if Mendoza was of quite the caliber that Richard O. Watson was, but nobody was. Another one is Judge Zambrano. Raul Zambrano is another fellow that was a John Tanner hire who became a judge and who's been, you might have seen him, he's been in some public trials, but he was also somebody that looked up to Richard O. Watson as a mentor and somebody that he modeled his judging after. So I feel like I have a common bond with Mr. Mendoza, both being Tanner prosecutors and both looking up to Richard O. Watson as a mentor. Another drink. I'll tell you the story about my trial. So the trial I had over in Putnam County with Charles Mendoza was the civil judge. This might have been one of his last trials he had before he got appointed to the federal bench. And I think it was the honeybee trial. And there was a young prosecutor who had just gotten promoted to felony, and it was his first felony trial. And I was helping out my buddy Mac Brunton, who's passed away. He died of cancer. But he was a good buddy of mine, and I would assist him in all his trials because he hated doing trials. He might have heard me tell this story, but he used to hate doing trials. And so I loved doing trials. I didn't like the negotiating and the schmoozing. I'm not a schmoozer. I'm a fighter. So so we had a deal. When he couldn't schmooze his way out of a case, and it was going to trial, then I'd come in and I'd help him with his trial. So it was fun. I got to play in trial land, being an appellate lawyer. And Mac, my buddy Mac Brunton, got to not have to pull the heavy weight of doing trial work. And so we had this case, and it was this the prosecutor on the other side was young, and I will say I think that he is also in the running to be a judge right now. I'm not going to name him because I respect him as a person for what my experience with him as a prosecutor in this case. Now, when I was a prosecutor, I was a much different kind of litigator than I was as a defense attorney. As a defense attorney, I am much more scorched earth, advocate, and just do what you can, right? Just kill them all, right? Go to war. As a prosecutor, you kind of have to be fair and balanced and even-handed with everybody, even in the face of scorched earth Gosney, right? Well, this prosecutor was brand new in first felony trial. And I remember he didn't know really what he was doing. And I had 4 mistrial motions before 10:30 that morning. So we started, and his opening statement, I'd object, it would get sustained, I'd move for mistrial. And I had this prosecutor so rattled. I mean, it was like, it was just war. When you're at war and I'm fighting. Now, I got to say, our client, and this one I don't want to go too into detail, our client was not, he was going to go down. Let's just put it that way. Sometimes as a public defender, you got to go down. Well, as a prosecutor, you don't need to make mistakes. You're going to get our guy. You're going to nail him to the wall, right? You don't need to cheat, or you don't need to mess up. But this prosecutor was doing it not out of malice, or he wasn't trying to cheat. He just didn't know. And so I was zinging him with objections. And every time my objection would get sustained by Mendoza, who knew that I was right, and he's like, sustained. And then I'd say, move for mistrial. And of course he would say, I'm not going to move mistrial. But you do that to preserve it, right? So I was just having fun. I was just having fun because and he was giving me the openings and I was taking them, and it was just a blast. I was just really having fun on this trial. I mean, and the prosecutor was not. He was miserable. I got to say, because he didn't know what he was doing and he was over his head. But he did it. Ultimately he came through. And to all kudos to this prosecutor, because a lot of prosecutors get their nose out of joint and they're like, "Who are you, Gosney? How can you say?" And they get egos bruised. But this guy, who is he was very much wanting to learn, and he was respectful. He shook my hand afterwards, and I was being respectful. I was just very, and I will say that the way that prosecutor reacted to the way I was burdening him was very professional, and I won't forget that. And after the trial was over and the guy got guilty, which we knew it was a foregone conclusion, but we put up the good fight, and he was giving me openings, so I was taking the openings, right? Mendoza calls us all back into the back chambers after to kind of decompress and to make sure everybody's feathers are smooth. And I was just having fun, and I got to meet Carlos Mendoza, and we were talking, and and he was telling the prosecutor and saying, you got to do this, got to do this. And it was just a really nice experience. And it was the kind of thing that Judge Watson would do as far as mentoring the young attorneys and the prosecutor in this case, and giving them some advice and giving them some attaboys. Because this prosecutor, he was a good guy, and he was trying to do the right thing. He needed to learn, and he was on the right path, and he was humble about it and took it right way. And Mendoza was taking that right. So I wanted to share that little. So I had a jury trial, probably Carlos Mendoza's last jury trial as a Florida State Circuit judge before he got appointed to the federal bench. Now, the federal bench, that's a lifetime appointment, boys. So he's on there for life unless he gets elevated, which he's still life. So this is all lifetime appointment. So he's got the gig right there. Anyways, so I thought I would share that. So I'm really pleased to see, because I wasn't certain who the judge was. I don't know a lot of federal judges, but I do know about Carlos Mendoza, and I do know that he's a great judge, and I'm very pleased to see it's a wonderful order, right on the money on the law. I'm cheering for Professor Negy to get a big pile of money, and Mendoza ruling right on the law on this issue. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So Wendy H., thank you very much. She gifted 5 Steve Gosney memberships. That's right. All stories are good stories. They help a person get to know others. Thank you. Gosney, Prosecutor Steve, throw away the key, Gosney representing the state. No. No, I think the guidelines, the Criminal Punishment Code guidelines are good kind of rule of thumb. I think that I like the guidelines in Florida, if you've seen them. I enjoyed being a prosecutor. I think I was a good prosecutor back in the day. I think I'd be better, even better today. So let's see what else we got here. Who should we go raid? That's the next question. Maybe Aussie Overlord. What do you think? All right, Aussie, is he paying attention? He better be paying attention. Let's see, live. You're gonna do the whole. I don't know how many people we have here. I just wanted to share a little story about insight there. You guys see there, yellow, orange, red. You're gonna do it right. Redirect. Okay, gonna do that. Anyways, and so let's go I got a couple more little things I want to tell you about. So we're done with the Charles Negy. Check it out on Legal Insurrection. Worthwhile to see. And you can read about the Negy case. And it's an important case. It's very important that there's some pushback against these administrators for violating the free speech rights of professors, right? So cheers to you. Wendy H., it's great to see you as always. I'm always happy. Miss K. Grift, good to see you. Little sidecar. I'm celebrating. Now, celebration time. Wednesday, May 8th. That's this Wednesday. That's not tomorrow, but the next day. I'll be in Orlando at the Stardust Video and Coffee at 7 p.m., and I will be reading first chapter of Death Penalty Desires, which Slidey Pie is reading, by the way. So I'll read that. It'll be a meet and greets opportunity. On May 14th, that's the coming Tuesday, I'm going to have John C. Wright back on and Jay Lamplighter Wright, and we're going to talk about writing fantasy novels. So y'all are sick of like John C. Wright talking about Catholicism, and he's like up there above the head. But I've got him reeled in. He's going to start, he and his wife, who's also a science fiction fantasy writer, to talk about the writing process and about writing. Yellow, orange, red. Are you still here? You got to come in and listen to somebody who's written 25 books, 25 fantasy science fiction books. And so he's going to teach us on how to write science fiction fantasy. And I'm just going to open my ears and listen. So I'm very looking forward to that one. So he's going to talk and teach us, and along with his wife, who is also a writer. Excellent stuff. So May 14th. And there's more news to come, big news to come. I don't think tonight is the night to reveal. We don't have a lot of reveals. So let's do the Aussie raid, right? You know how to do that, folks? You got it? You know how to do the Aussie raid? Let me see here. We can paste. All right. So when you go over Aussie Overlord, say Gosney raid. All right. Good night. Good to see you. We'll catch up soon.